Most vacations are designed around one question. How much can we see while we're there? How many cities? How many landmarks? How many must-do experiences? But there's another way to design a trip, one that feels entirely different and more luxurious. It's called slow travel. And today, I want to show you what that looks like and why it produces a completely different kind of vacation. Welcome back to Gracefully Lori. I'm Lori. If you're new here, this channel is about living with intention and quiet modern grace. Today, we're looking at the 5 elements of slow travel that differentiate it from what you've likely experienced in your prior vacations. And once you understand these, you may never plan a trip the same way again. Element 1, there's nothing inherently wrong with seeing a lot in a short amount of time. In fact, I've done it. When I was younger, I traveled through Italy and visited 6 cities in just over 1 week. We moved from one end of the country to the other by train, carefully structured, tightly scheduled, making sure we saw everything we were supposed to see in each place before catching the next train. It was efficient, it was organized, it was impressive. It was exhausting. Not because Italy wasn't beautiful or the sightseeing wasn't great, but because every 2 days we were packing, checking out, navigating a train station, arriving at a new hotel, figuring out a new location, etc. Every arrival required adjustment, and every departure required closure. There's very little continuity, and that's the part most people don't account for when they plan ambitious trips. The energy cost of constant movement and constant transitioning. New room, new streets, new transportation system, new expectations. When a trip is built around movement, you spend much of your time adapting. And while that kind of travel can be exciting, it also creates a very specific kind of fatigue. So what does that mean? You see a lot, but you rarely settle. And when you don't settle, the experience stays slightly surface level, no matter how beautiful the place is. Element 2, it wasn't until I planned a very different kind of trip, one built around limiting movement, that I realized how much of my energy had been going towards transitioning rather than the experience. And that's where slow travel begins. When you stop moving every few days, you feel like you have more time and space, and that changes everything. On a return trip to Ireland where I decided to stay in my favorite location, something subtle happened. I didn't need to think about logistics. I didn't need to worry about repacking and changing at hotels. I didn't need to think about schedules. I stopped asking, what's next? And I started asking, what do I want to do today? It was not empty time or boredom, but breathing room inside the trip. When you stay in one place longer, you begin to recognize the streets. You know where the light hits in the morning. You stop navigating and you start noticing. You're not racing to fit in landmarks. You're choosing how to spend your hours. And that is exactly where the luxury begins. Not in 5-star hotels, not in the number of destinations, but in the ability to wake up without urgency, to linger at breakfast, to return to the same cafe whenever you want, to walk around without checking your watch. Luxury, in this context, is time that isn't over-allocated. It's space that allows something unexpected to unfold. And when you create that kind of room, something else happens, something that rarely occurs on tightly structured trips. You start experiencing a place differently, not as a checklist, but as a unique and special place. And that's what I want to show you next. Element 3, you don't realize what you're missing when you move quickly. Because when you're traveling fast, you see the highlights, but when you stay longer, you start to belong just a little, and that changes everything. When I took that return trip to Ireland, I chose to stay in one small area I already loved. Every morning, I woke up to the smell of a homemade Irish breakfast drifting downstairs in the small B&B I stayed at. It sounds simple, but after a few days, there was something wonderful about walking downstairs and already knowing the faces at the tables, where we checked in about the day before, we talked about what everyone was doing that day, and I got great recommendations of things to do from people who live there, including things I never would have thought of: falconry, handcrafting silver, and so many other options. It made the trip feel special, not scheduled, not transactional, personal. That's the first thing I noticed. When you stay longer, places begin to recognize you. Another example, one evening, the B&B owner recommended a small pub locals love. Not the one on the main road, not the one in the brochures. I met some really great local people. We listened to music, we talked, we laughed, we closed the place down. The next day, someone from the table called the B&B to see if I wanted to join them for dinner, and I did. That doesn't happen when you're leaving in the next morning. That only happens when you've created enough space for something unplanned to grow. Here's another example from the same trip. There's a small family-owned cafe tucked slightly off the center, not somewhere you'd go unless you were wandering. I stopped in for tea and a slice of cake. Then I went back the next day. Soon they were saving small treats for me to try. We talked about their family, about the town, and about why I love bookstores and travel and many other topics. By the time I left, saying goodbye felt personal and a little sad. That's not tourism, that's relationship. This is what slow travel gives you. Not more landmarks, not more photos, familiarity, recognition, invitation. You stop consuming a place and you start participating in it, and that feels very different. And here's what surprised me the most. It wasn't just that the trip felt better, it was that I felt different inside it. Let's talk about that next. Element 4. What surprised me most, what I did, it was how I felt. Not overwhelmed, not rushed, not worried about what I hadn't seen yet, just steady. When you're moving from city to city or activity to activity, there's always something pulling at you. The next train, the next reservation, the next landmark, the next must-see. Even when it's exciting, there's a subtle tension underneath it. You're always slightly preparing to leave. But when you stay in one place longer, something shifts. You're not preparing to leave, you're settling in. And that changes the tone of the trip. What that looked like for me, because I wasn't packing every other day, because I wasn't watching the clock for departures, because I didn't feel the pressure to maximize every hour, I found myself walking slower, lingering longer, letting afternoons unfold without forcing them into a plan. If I wanted to sit with a book in that cafe for an extra hour, I did. If a conversation ran long, I didn't glance at my watch. If I stumbled upon something unexpected, I could engage with it. That flexibility felt luxurious, not in a 5-star way, in a freedom way. And here's the part people don't talk about. You return home feeling like you actually experienced the place, not just documented it. You remember the smells, the faces, the conversations, the rhythms. You don't just remember the itinerary, you remember how it felt to be there. That's a very different kind of vacation. So if this sounds appealing, if you're thinking, that's the kind of trip I'd like to try next, the natural question becomes, how do you design that intentionally? Because slow travel isn't accidental, it's chosen. So let's talk about how to do that. Element 5. Slow travel isn't necessarily about staying for 3 weeks. It's about how you structure whatever time you have. 5 days can feel rushed. 5 days can also feel expansive. The difference is design. Here are some recommendations as you look to plan your own slow travel trip. Number 1, choose where you stay carefully. This is more important than most people realize. If you stay in a large, anonymous hotel filled with other international tourists, your experience will likely stay surface level. But when you stay somewhere smaller, a family-run B&B, a boutique inn, an Airbnb hosted by someone who actually lives there, you open the door to something different. You meet people. You get recommendations that aren't on TripAdvisor. You learn about the rhythm of the area from someone who lives in it every day. That B&B owner in Ireland, she changed the entire trajectory of my trip. And here's something personal. I usually avoid staying somewhere with a kitchen, not because it's wrong, but because I want to experience the food culture. I want the bakery, the cafe, the pub, the family-owned restaurant. That choice keeps me outward facing. But the principle isn't about kitchens. It's about asking, will this accommodation connect me or isolate me? Number 2, find safe ways to befriend locals. This doesn't mean forcing conversations. It means positioning yourself where conversations naturally happen. Bar seating, small tours, family-owned cafes, public transportation. When locals begin recognizing you, even after a few days, something shifts. You're no longer just passing through, you're participating. And that's where the real recommendations come from. Not Google, from people. Number 3, leave room to wander. This is the hardest one for a lot of high achieving women. We like structure, we like efficiency, but some of the best experiences happen when you're not looking for them. The little cafe you didn't research, the bookstore tucked down a side street, the local market that isn't on the top 10 list. You have technology now, so you won't truly get lost, but give yourself the freedom to move without an agenda for a few hours. This is where discovery lives. Number 4, use public transportation. This one surprises people, but when you use trains, buses, or local transit, you begin to understand a place spatially. You learn neighborhoods. You observe people's daily routines. You see where life actually happens. You stop hovering above the city and you start moving through it. That shift alone deepens your experience. None of these things are expensive. None require a longer trip. They require intention. Slow travel isn't about doing less. It's about experiencing more because you're moving differently. And once you've traveled this way, it becomes very hard to go back because you realize the greatest luxury isn't speed, it's depth, it's time, and it's space to experience. When I think back to the fast-paced trip across Italy, 6 cities, trains, tight timelines, checking boxes, I'm grateful for it. It showed me what I was capable of. But when I think about Ireland, staying in one place, waking up to the smell of breakfast, knowing the names of the people I saw each day, having locals call the B&B to see if I wanted to join them, that trip feels different. It wasn't about seeing more. It was about experiencing more. And that's the distinction. Slow travel doesn't mean you never move again. It doesn't mean you avoid landmarks. It doesn't mean you abandon structure entirely. It simply means that you choose depth over speed. You allow space. You design your trip in a way that invites connection instead of constant transition. And when you do that, even for 5 days, your vacation stops feeling like something you survived and starts feeling like something you've lived. This is the quiet luxury of slow travel. Not 5-star amenities, not exotic destinations, but time, presence, space to wander, room to connect, and the freedom to let a place unfold instead of trying to conquer it. If you've never tried traveling this way, I hope this opens a door for a future trip. And if you have, I'd love to know what changed for you when you slowed down. Please tell me in the comments. Are you someone who prefers to see as much as possible? Or could you imagine designing a trip around staying longer in one place? If this gave you a new lens on travel, please like this video and then subscribe for more conversations on traveling and living with quiet elegance. Until next time, my graceful friends.